This is the AI briefing from Bosio.digital. Today, Anthropic just deleted more than 4/5 of the instructions running its own coding tool, and nothing got worse. There's a lesson in that for your company. It is not the obvious one. Let's start with the number because it is genuinely startling. This morning, Anthropic published a post about how it writes the instructions behind Claude Code. Buried in the second section was this: they removed over 80% of that tool system prompt for their newest models, with no measurable loss on their coding evaluations. Sit with the precision of that for a second. Not, we tidied things up. They deleted 4/5 of the instructions governing their flagship developer product, and their own tests could not detect the difference. The scaffolding was not helping anymore. It had turned into weight. If you have spent the last year and a half building an AI capability inside your company, you have almost certainly accumulated the same kind of weight. The long system prompt, the document of rules about tone, the running list of things the AI keeps getting wrong, added to month after month. The same reminder written in 3 places because it kept ignoring the first 2. That work was rational. Those fences existed because older models genuinely needed them. What Anthropic has now shown on their own product with their own evaluations is that a large share of it was compensating for a limitation that no longer exists. That is a real form of depreciation, and it is nobody's fault. Through last year, heavily instructed AI setups were treated as a moat. Proprietary prompt libraries, carefully tuned instruction sets, the internal wiki of what to tell the AI. A meaningful slice of that asset just lost value, and the people who built it did nothing wrong. So what changed? Anthropic frames it as 6 corrections, not new rules, practices that had quietly become myths. Let's walk all 6 because the reasoning underneath each one matters more than the headline. 1. Rules gave way to judgment. Strong guidance was always a trade, and Anthropic is candid about it. Without those guardrails, older models wrote bad code comments in many cases, and the team accepted that trade-off. The rule was never right. It was just less wrong than the alternative. 2. Examples gave way to interface design. This one runs against instinct. They found that giving the model examples actually constrains it to a narrow exploration space. The better move is to make the tool itself more expressive, so its shape communicates how to use it. 3. Front-loading gave way to progressive disclosure. Instead of pushing everything into the system prompt, load the right context at the moment it is needed. They moved code review and verification out into separate skills the tool calls only when relevant. 4. Repetition gave way to simple tool descriptions. Older models sometimes needed the same instruction twice and paid more attention to the end of their context window than the start. So instructions got duplicated. The fix is narrow and specific. Say it once in the tool description. 5. Manual memory gave way to automatic memory. The hotkey that used to write notes into a project instruction file is superseded. The model now saves what is relevant on its own. And 6. Simple specifications gave way to richer references. A plain text spec is often a lossy description of something you could show precisely instead. A working example. A test suite. A rubric a checking agent can actually apply. Anthropic also shipped a command that does the cleanup for you. If you work in Claude Code, type /doctor. It right-sizes your skills and instruction files automatically. That is the most concrete takeaway in the whole announcement, and it takes a minute. There is one more finding in that post worth pausing on, because it is the failure most companies have and cannot see. Anthropic looked at transcripts of their own internal usage. What they found was not a wrong instruction. It was contradictory instructions, arriving from 3 different layers inside the same request. One place said, leave documentation as appropriate. Another said, do not add comments. The model can usually resolve it, but it has to stop and think carefully about the conflict before deciding what to do. That is a tax you pay on every single request, and it is invisible unless somebody goes looking. Now, here is where we part company with the coding advice. Because the obvious takeaway from all of this is write less instruction, and for a business that conclusion is wrong. Look at what Anthropic replaced the comment rule with. The new instruction says, write code that reads like the surrounding code. Match its comment density, naming, and idiom. Notice what that instruction actually does. It does not tell the model what good looks like. It tells the model where to find out. The answer is already sitting in the codebase. The conventions are on the screen. In every function around the one being edited, the model is not exercising taste. It is reading local convention and conforming to it. That is the mechanism. Rules can become judgment wherever the right answer is derivable from the surrounding context. In code, as so it very often is. And code has a second property that makes the trade even safer. It has compilers and test suites. When the model guesses wrong, something goes red, immediately in front of the person who caused it. Now apply that same test to the work your company actually runs on. Your brand voice is not derivable from a logistics brief. Nothing in the surrounding documents tells the model that you never use exclamation marks, or that you refuse to talk down about a competitor. Your pricing floor is not inferable from a proposal. The proposal shows what you charged. It does not show the number below which you walk away. Who can sign off on what? What done means for a deliverable in your firm. Which client facts must never appear in which room. None of that is in the surrounding context. And here's the part that should genuinely concern you. None of it fails loudly. There is no compiler for tone. No test goes red when the AI quotes a price under your floor. None goes red when it drafts something that sounds like everyone else, or carries a detail from one client's file into another client's document. The output looks fine. Confident, well-formatted, plausible. You find out weeks later from a client. Or you never find out at all. So the reframe we would offer is not write less. It is this: strip the scaffolding. Keep the non-derivable. Scaffolding is everything that exists because a model used to be weaker. The workaround. The reminder written 3 times. The rigid format rule. The fence you built after one bad output in March. Every one of those is a candidate for deletion, and this is Anthropic's real contribution. Test the deletion, rather than assuming the fence is still needed. Most of them were written against a model that no longer exists. The non-derivable is everything the model cannot work out from what sits in front of it, no matter how capable it gets. Your voice, your judgment boundaries, money, confidentiality, who signs off, what finished actually means. That is not scaffolding. That is your business written down. And here's the thing that makes this more than our opinion. Anthropic drew the same line themselves. In one clause, almost every write-up of this post has dropped. On skills, they say, avoid making them over-constrained, except in highly important areas. They wrote the exemption. They just did not develop it, because their domain is code, and in code, the important areas are narrow. In a company, the important areas are most of what makes the company yours. Which brings us to the consequence worth taking into a budget conversation. If the model now supplies more of the judgment, then the differentiated part of your AI stops being the instructions. It becomes the architecture around them. Which knowledge loads for which task? Where the human gate sits? What happens to a correction? Whether it evaporates in a chat window or gets written back somewhere, it will apply next time. None of that arrives in a model update. It is design work, and it is specific to your company. That is why the depreciation is uneven. A prompt library is a pile of instructions, so the more of it was scaffolding, the more of it just got marked down. An operating system is a set of decisions about structure, boundaries, and learning. A model release makes the first one obsolete. It makes the second one more valuable because the thing that differentiates you moved up a layer. When the floor rises, what sits above the floor is what counts. Now, we should be honest because this post was an invitation to audit our own house. And we did, the same day. It found real things. About 1,500 lines of context were loading before any work started, not per project. Every session, whatever the task, a session about a client proposal was loading the same material as a session about our accounting. We also had two memory systems quietly overlapping, each holding durable facts with no rule about which one wins. Nobody designed that. It is what happens when a new capability arrives and the old structure does not remove itself. And two append-only logs had grown to roughly 1,100 lines each, with no criterion for when anything leaves. But the more important half is what we are not touching. The secrets protocol stays. The rule that nothing gets published without a human review stays. Client confidentiality boundaries stay. Money and sign-off rules stay. Every one of those is verbose. Some are repeated in more than one place. A tidiness pass would flag all of them. They stay because their failure modes are silent and expensive, and they stay with Anthropic's own blessing. Except in highly important areas. If a simplification pass deletes the thing that stops you leaking a credential, you did not right-size your context. You removed a control and called it hygiene. That is the honest version of this exercise. Deleting instructions feels productive. Roughly half of what we found was genuinely dead weight from a weaker model. The other half was load-bearing and looked identical from the outside. The work is the sorting, and the sorting is exactly the part no command can do for you. So what would we have you do on Monday? Start with the contradictions because they cost nothing to fix and they tax every request. Gather every place you have written instructions for your AI, put them side by side, and look for two rules that cannot both be followed. Then sort what survives using two questions. Could the AI work this out from the material already in front of it? And if it got this wrong, would anything catch it automatically? If both answers are yes, it is scaffolding. If either is no, it is load-bearing, and it stays. Then do the real work, which is not an AI project at all. Write down the things only you know. Your voice with examples of what you would never say. Your money boundaries, your confidentiality walls, your definition of finished. If your firm has never written those down, that is the finding. Your AI has been guessing at them, and so probably have some of your people. One last thing, and it is the durable lesson from this week. Run that sort again on every major model release. Some share of your instructions is compensating for limits that will quietly disappear. If you never retest, you will carry that weight for years and mistake it for architecture. That was this week's briefing. What Anthropic's 80% cut actually means for a business, and the half of your instructions no model release will ever hand you. The full article is on the site. Every source, the 6 shifts in Anthropic's own words, and a prompt you can paste to run this audit on your own material in one sitting. This has been the AI Briefing from Bosio.digital, where AI transformation starts with your people. Thanks for listening.